2 years ago, I left my six-figure job to pursue my side hustle full-time, and it has been a wild ride, emotionally, mentally, financially, but above all, it has been 1000% worth it. So I asked you guys over on Instagram what questions you have for me. I'm going to be sharing some stories, answering some questions, and also giving some advice to those who are open to receiving it. I know some of you will be coming for specific questions, so I left timestamps down in the description so you can go ahead and check that out and take what you need. But if you're here just to kick it with me and you want to hear my spiel, grab yourself something to drink, a notebook, preferably Coco Michelle, and let's get right into it. So before we hop into it, I just want to give a quick introduction. My name is Andrea and I'm the artist behind Coco Michelle Illustration. So when I say I quit from my side hustle is art. I'm a full-time illustrator and I also have a stationery company, and I am sold in retailers like Macy's and H-E-B and some other really big retailers soon to come. I worked in merchandising and buying for nearly 10 years, and I transitioned into my side hustle full-time in 2020. So I'm gonna dig into some questions where I can give you a little more context, but if you wanna hear the full story, I did actually come out with a video 2 years ago, right after I quit my job, where I give you like the full tea, and I'll leave that up in the cards above. Before I answer any questions, one thing that I wanna just say up front is that this transition is incredibly difficult. I know that there are so many people who are in jobs that they don't wanna be in. There are so many people who are living lives that they don't want to live, that are feeling controlled, that are feeling trapped by the current job that they have. And for those of you who are here feeling like that, I want to say two things. You are never trapped. And a lot of times our jobs, our employers try to blind us from the options that we have, try to make it so that we don't recognize our own power that we have within ourselves. So just know that that's inside of you, that light that you have that burns deep within you can get you out of anything. You don't have to work that job. It doesn't mean you can quit today. It doesn't mean you can quit tomorrow. But there is a way, there is a journey, a path for you to find your happiness, to live in your truth that does not involve that job. So that's the first thing I want you to know. There's always an out. But the second thing I want to make very clear is that entrepreneurship is not rainbows and daisies. This is hard work. I am working more now than I have in my life. If you're looking to escape your job because you want to have a soft life or a life of leisure, entrepreneurship ain't it. This journey is not something that you can participate in passively. There are many people, especially when you're looking at people on social media, who can create this perception that we're consuming that makes it seem like this side of life is easier. And as someone who's lived it for 2 years now, it truly isn't. And I also found that a lot of things that I was running from my job were still present in entrepreneurship because it wasn't about the job, it was about me. So there's gonna be a lot of reflection and a lot of things that you're gonna have to work out within yourself and unpack to really get to the healing, to figure out why these things are the way they are in your life. And a lot of times it's easy to make your job the scapegoat when it's really things that you haven't dealt with. Because when you run away from that, guess what you can't run away from? Yourself. Be aware that entrepreneurship is not the easy way out. So I just want to put those things up front. But let's jump into these questions. So the first question from Janae Denise, the artist: when did you know that it was time to transition to full-time? This is a great question to start with because I think timing was one of the most crucial parts of my transition being successful. And I think that's because you have to be extremely patient to be able to make this transition in a way that you will be able to sustain your business. So what people tend to do is they put either a certain amount of time or an age attached to specific goals, right? I want to be married by 25, or I want to be promoted from this role within a year. We use those kind of timetables as a way to motivate us because we're trying to restrict the amount of time we have to be able to accomplish something. I think there are scenarios where limiting the amount of time you allocate to do something can be helpful, especially someone who has ADHD. I really thrive in situations where I have very little time to accomplish a lot, to a detriment. But when you are trying to decide if it's time to quit your job, I think that requires you to be extremely patient, because as time progresses, it's going to be incredibly difficult for you to maintain both. But I think it is crucial to maintain both as long as possible. So here are the indicators that made me feel like it was time for me to transition fully. The first thing was I was becoming less efficient both at my full-time job and at my side hustle. So what happened was when I showed up to work, I was exhausted because I was up all night working on my side hustle, and I had no passion or no interest in what I was doing anymore. So the combination of being exhausted and not wanting to do it was really impacting my ability to show up and perform my job to the level that I was used to. And one thing that I certainly did not want is for me to ruin my reputation that I spent nearly a decade building because I was, falling behind on my work. Especially since I worked in retail, I knew that these were the same people that I was going to work with once I transitioned into Coco Michelle full time. So I was really particular about not burning bridges and leaving my job on a high note. So once I saw that my work was starting to suffer, I realized that this was coming to an end and it was time for me to start figuring out how I was going to make this transition. Also, because I was so exhausted at work all day, when I came home, the last thing I really wanted to do was start my night shift and start doing Coco Michelle and doing illustrations, especially after being in wifey and mommy mode. I really was depleted and I didn't have a lot of energy left. And that spark that I had in the beginning of my side hustle, where it was kind of like fueling me and keeping me going, and I was really running probably off of adrenaline, it was starting to wear down, and I became very cautious because what I didn't want was to become resentful of Coco Michelle and really just everything fall apart because I didn't want to do it, and I felt like it was holding me back. The second thing was that I was coming to terms with the sacrifices that I was going to have to make to be able to make Coco Michelle work. A lot of the times it's not that we don't know what we have to do, it's that we don't want to do what we have to do to make it happen. Like, I would love to lose some weight, but do I want to do the things that are required of me to lose weight? Not necessarily. That resistance between what you want to have versus what you're willing to do can be found in many things in our life, including transitioning into or working for ourselves. Once I started to come to terms with the life that I have today cannot remain the same if I want to have this life. So there were things that I was going to have to sacrifice in order to get myself into position to be able to do Coco Michelle full time. That meant I had to cut back on spending. I had to be less social. I had to be super effective and efficient with my work. And one of the biggest decisions that we had to make as a family was we had to leave New York City. And once I made that decision, that was really the catalyst for everything that happened afterwards. I wanted to be near the city. We had already left New York City to move to New Jersey once we had my son. And even being in Jersey felt like I was just too far from it all. Once I decided that, Coco Michelle was what I wanted to pursue full time, the cost of living in New Jersey, in New York City, in that general vicinity is just too high for us to be able to save the money we needed to be able to make that transition. The next question is from Neek the Beauty, and it says, how did you know financially you were in the space to quit? Finances are the most important part of this equation. Under no circumstances would I ever recommend anyone make this leap if they are not in a place financially where they can make this work. Do not burden yourself with entrepreneurship if you do not have to. I want to make this super clear because social media has distorted our view of what entrepreneurship looks like and has romanticized it in a way that is unrealistic and is not going to be the majority of people's experience with entrepreneurship. Finances are real. Money is real. Instagram and all this stuff that you see is not. So when that rent comes due, your landlord does not give a damn how many likes you got on Instagram. It does not matter. So the finances have to be set up in place. So like I mentioned in the last answer, we moved upstate so that we could lower our cost of living. So just to give you a sense of the timeline, we moved into this apartment January of 2020. Now, we all know what happened a few months after that, a full-blown panorama. So very early on, I want to say March of 2020, I was furloughed from my job. And if you don't know what furloughed means, I didn't know either until it happened, but it's basically like you're temporarily unemployed and you're just waiting for your job to call you until you can come back to work. But we were able to collect unemployment during that time. So what I did was I immediately sat down with my husband and was like, this is our time. I'm not gonna have to work. I was basically getting paid unemployment while building Coco Michelle and getting it to a place where we could launch it and make it into a sustainable business before I had to go back to my job. This is when we were in a really tight time constraint, like what I was talking about before. So I didn't know when I was gonna get that call. I could get it in a week, I could get it in 3 months. I had no idea. I worked tirelessly, building an audience, trying to engage, trying to figure out what kind of products my customer would like. And we were not really generating that much income from it at this point, but we had the stability coming in from the unemployment. So in July, I got the call saying it was time to come back. And about 1 week into the job, I put in my notice and was able to leave the job 2 weeks after that. I was in a very unusual, probably not gonna happen again scenario where I was able to have income coming in while not working, which is beautiful, and be able to take my time and resources and invest it into Coco Michelle, which made me be able to launch Coco Michelle and be profitable. I also am married. So I have a spouse, my husband, who is a trainer, who has money and income coming in. So that also helps be able to stabilize, because the pressure is not just all on Coco Michelle to provide money. So I had financial support in that aspect as well. And for me to be able to determine if I was able to financially support my responsibilities using Coco Michelle, I sat down, I wrote down all the expenses, I calculated everything down to the cent. This is how much money I need to bring in every single month in order for me to sustain. Nothing extra, nothing over the top, just sustain the life that we have today. So then I looked at Coco Michelle and said, on average, this is how much a customer spends on an order here, right? So let's say it was about $26, $27. So I took that and said, okay, if this is how much money I need to make for a month, and this is how much an average order value is, how many orders do I need a month to be able to sustain myself? This is what I did. So if I took it and let's say it was $4,000 a month I need to sustain myself, and each order on Coco Michelle is about $26. That meant that I needed to get 154 orders a month to be able to sustain Coco Michelle. Now, 154 orders a month sounds like a lot. So I was like, let me break this down to a week. 39 orders a week. Still feeling like a lot. So then I said, okay, how many orders is that a day? 6 orders a day. 6 orders a day was what I needed to be sustainable. I just need 6 orders a day. And breaking it down like that really gave me the confidence, like, if I show up and I get online and I do what I have to do, and I just need to get 6 orders a day to be able to sustain myself, that made it feel so much more attainable, and it gave me the confidence I needed to be able to go for it full time. I really recommend this to anyone who is selling a service or product to break down. It makes the goal very clear. But if we sit down and we break it down into bite-sized pieces, then it becomes less intimidating and more achievable. We love to put limits on ourselves, right? We love to tell ourselves like, oh, it's too big. It's gonna be such a hassle to be able to make that much. It's gonna be so difficult to be able to find that many customers. And no matter what you believe, you're right. Right? Self-fulfilling prophecy will tell you that if you believe you can do it, guess what? You can't. You won't. But if you believe that you can, it's going to activate your mind to start looking for ways and solutions for you to be able to achieve what you know that you can. So it's really important to have that mindset right when you're trying to figure out your financials. So if you are selling a product or a service, really sit down, look at everything. Look at your student loans, look at your rent, look at your groceries, look at any money you're spending on subscriptions, every single thing. Write it down. Break down how much money you need to make per week, per day to be able to sustain yourself. And all of a sudden it's going to start looking a lot more realistic to you. And I promise you're going to feel a lot more motivated because it's going to feel achievable to you. Versus saying, oh my God, how am I going to make $4,000 a month? Nah, how am I gonna get 6 sales a day? You could do that. The next question comes from World of Shaw Official, and they ask mistakes to avoid for anyone wanting to do the same. So many mistakes. Now, I will say that I am a huge advocate for making mistakes. I think that, me making mistakes aren't gonna prevent you from making mistakes, but I will share some things that I did that I will not do again. One thing that I got caught up with over and over again was not minding my damn business, okay? I was on Instagram scrolling through and looking at how other people were running their businesses and then changing the way I was moving and the direction I was going because I saw someone else doing it and thought that they were successful. And every time it happened, I was like, I know I did not just do that again. It's so easy when you are online and your business is online, so you can't even avoid it, to see other people doing things and naturally starting to second guess what you already had planned. So for me, when I started Coco Michelle, it was supposed to be gifting stationery focused, right? I really wanted to have a heavy focus on greeting cards. And as soon as I came out the gate, I saw everyone doing art prints. So I was like, okay, maybe that's what I should do. And I started doing art prints, and my art style, especially at that time, just did not work well as art prints. And I would look at this stuff and I'll be like, I wouldn't hang this in my home, but I'm still salty that y'all ain't buying this for your homes, and that mentality is silly when you say it out loud. But I wasn't receiving that message because I saw all these people selling art prints, and I thought that meant that that's what I should be doing. And now as my art style has evolved, art prints are a huge seller for me, but I wasn't ready at that time. And I was making decisions prematurely because of what I was seeing other people do. And as an artist, the way that you present your art on product makes a huge difference. Certain things work better with certain art styles, and it is what it is. You can't force a square peg into a round hole. It just doesn't work. So I found myself forcing my art style into a box that it didn't belong in, where if I had just followed my gut from the start, I would have been creating product in a way that my audience could consume it. So that was a mistake that I made many times. And sometimes it worked out. I saw a lot of people doing stickers. I decided to do stickers. Now stickers are I'm basically run a sticker shop. I was essentially blocking my own blessings, trying to chase other people's dreams and wondering why I wasn't happy at the end. Another mistake I made was not investing into systems or software to run my business and to be more sustainable while I still had my income of my full-time job. I was so eager to leave my job when really after my furlough, I probably could have stayed on a little bit longer to be able to have that income generated so that I could invest it into setting my business up for success. So when it was time for me to make those upgrades and start putting in systems and software in place, that burden was fully on my business versus being able to have the luxury of an income coming in where I can invest that into my business and it not put me completely under the table. So a lot of the things that I've had to upgrade within my business, I wish I had done so from the beginning, but I also feel like those are lessons that you learn along the way. I wouldn't have even known where to really start. So it's kind of hard to say, but it would have really been nice to be able to have that income to invest into the business and not have all of that be bootstrapped by Coco Michelle. The next question comes from Sandra. Hey girl. She said, I'd love to hear how you adjust your work schedule around Michael's growth stages, if you've ever worked with him around. This is a great question, especially for any of the mamas out there who are looking to do the transition. So I have a 4, almost 5-year-old son. Hi. And during the height of the pandemic, my son was here full time. That was a huge transition in and of itself because he had been in daycare since he was 6 months old. But we had made the decision to pull him out of daycare just for the safety of him and our family. And he was home while we were building the business, and it was incredibly difficult because I was dealing with trying to build my business, raise my son. The mom guilt was at an all-time high because I felt like I was just the worst mom ever because I just had to be glued to my iPad, just constantly working, constantly grinding to be able to make it to the next stage. And what I can say is, especially coming on the other side of it, is there is no perfect balance. They always want to talk about work-life balance. And the thing that I hate about that phrase is that work is not some separate entity that is equal to life. So if you're putting work up against the rest of your life, how could that ever be balanced? Because what else falls into the life bucket? Like your partner, your children, yourself, like taking care of yourself, taking care of your home, taking care of your relationships, like all of that can't be burdened in life. And then we're supposed to balance all of that with work, right? And in my head, it's like, okay, if I split my time up 50-50, where 50% is work and 50% is life, I should be good. But there's too much in the life basket to just only allocate 50%. And I was wondering why I was feeling like I was overwhelmed all the time and I wasn't showing up as a great mom, as a great wife, or as a great business owner. Everything was suffering because I was trying to give this balance 50-50 and it just doesn't work like that. The best thing I could do was identify the seasons on which I was going to need to focus a lot on work versus when I could focus a lot on home. There's going to be ebbs and flows in different points in your career and as your journey as a mother. So if there were time periods where it was like, I need to prepare for this launch and that this is going to help me be able to sustain my family life, to be able to provide for my son. So I have to make this decision. And luckily I have a husband who's fabulous and I could lean on him to pick up wherever I could not in terms of parenting Michael. And in times where I was able to relax with work, I took that time and I was very intentional about spending that time with Michael. And that allowed me to really be mindful of everything that I was doing and how I was spending my time and to release the guilt, because there's so much guilt. And even if you are somebody who just has a partner or someone who is still trying to transition from their full-time job, the balancing act can give you a lot of guilt and a lot of stress. And there has to be a way to relieve yourself of that. So you have to give yourself permission to go all in on the things that you're doing in that moment, and not have your mind just filled and clouded with all the other shit you could be doing. That was my biggest problem. If I'm drawing, I need to be in the moment drawing. I can't be thinking about what I could be doing. I just need to be in that moment. And that was really difficult for me at first, because when I was drawing, I was like, dang, I could be out there doing something with Michael right now. But when I was doing something with Michael, I was thinking, dang, I really could be getting some work done. And there was no relief. So you have to be super intentional about what you're doing and say, if I'm gonna sit here and do this, even if it's, I'm gonna take a nap, I'm gonna relax, I'm gonna go get my nails done, you need to be in that moment and drop the burden that comes with it, because you'll never have intentional rest if you're constantly telling yourself that you should be doing something else. Don't try and be everywhere at once, because you'll never win that game. Okay, next question comes from She Meets City, aka my art wife, Sheena. And she said, if you could do anything different, what would it be? You know, hindsight is 2020. So there's a lot of things that I would do differently if I had the choice. But in reality, everything had to happen the way it did in order for me to get to where I am. How much I hate saying that after all the struggles. It really was, every single obstacle I went through was the setup for me to do the next thing. It's wild. Like, I was talking to my husband the other day and I was like, do you remember when we got our first order? I got one order, y'all, and it was a gift set of 10 Peeping Point set of greeting cards. The way I freaked out. I didn't know how I wanted to package it. I didn't know how I was gonna ship it. I didn't know anything. And like the urgency that flooded my body, like I was having like a full on out of body experience. Like, how am I going to get this to Georgia? And we literally packed the order. It was like the most methodical, surgical packing of an order I've ever done in my life. I was literally like tying the bow like a fool. Like, I've never experienced anything like this. We sent it off and I was like, oh, I don't know if I ever want to get another order again. Like, it was the most chaotic one order I've ever had in my life, but it was because it was the first time, it was brand new. It was the first time anyone I didn't know ordered from us. And then when I think back to last April, when we were packing over 10,000 units to be shipped for a wholesale order to HEB, and we were just packing up, boom, 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 boom. Didn't stop to think, just doing it. Like, there was no time to think, we just were doing it. And it's what we do. Something that was so hard for me a few years ago, and now I'm doing it 10,000 times. My whole family's here. We're getting it done. You know, holiday season comes, we're getting over 50 orders a day, and we're just going ham. And it's so crazy, because when you're in that moment, when you put that first order in the mail, you're like, how am I ever gonna be able to do this? What if I had gotten 2 orders in a day? Like, that's the way my mind was going. And each chapter just had to happen in order for us to get to this point. In order for us to have a multiple 6-figure business, we had to go through all that stuff. So it's hard to say like what I would do differently if I could. But again, I think like what I touched on earlier is like just minding my business, to be honest. And if anybody knows Sheena, like I just really just wanted to mind my business. And I'm so glad that I've learned that lesson for the final time and have just been tunnel vision. The Coco Michelle vision is very clear. I know exactly where I'm going. I know the direction, and I feel very confident in that. So I wish that I could have had that clarity sooner. So this next question comes from Honesty the Truth. And the question is how to trust your journey, even if it means separation from toxic family. And I really wanted to make sure that I got to this question because I think that this has a huge impact on our ability to make decisions. I do not come from a toxic family. My family is very supportive of everything that I do, and I'm very blessed to come from that situation. But here's what I will say. When I first started Coco Michelle, I kept it a secret. I didn't want to tell my parents. I didn't want to tell my friends. I didn't want to tell anyone because it felt very precious to me, and I didn't want anyone to try and talk me out of it. And it's not about anything with toxicity or people wishing ill upon me or my business. It was my perception that people would try to diminish what felt so big to me. And people have a habit of when you tell them about something and you're really excited and you have all this ambition just pouring from you, where people kind of want to turn the volume down. And it may not be intentional, but it doesn't change the impact of how that makes you feel. So when I finally told my parents that I was doing Coco Michelle and I was taking it very seriously and I wanted it to be something real, and they were like, oh, this is great, and they were supportive of it, that completely changed the way that I moved towards my goal of quitting my job. It was like I got the green light and the blessing that I could really go all the way in and start being proud and loud about the business that I was building. But as I sit here now, 2 years post quitting my job, I realize that is flawed in and of itself. Whether it be spouse, family, coworkers, having the responsibility of validation be given to anyone other than yourself, I wouldn't advise it. It's one thing to get input. It's one thing that, you want the people in your life to be supportive of what you're doing, but to pass the baton of validation to anyone else could single-handedly stop your dreams in their tracks. And it is that serious, because you have to be so self-assured and certain and confident in what you're doing, because people will, whether it be family or anyone, will try to put their limitations that they have for themselves onto you. It happens all the time, and we have to protect ourselves from that. So if you have family that you already know is toxic, that is very challenging to navigate around, and it's hard for you to be able to do what you have to do in peace if you feel like your family is going to try and dim your light and try and take their limits that they have and place them on you. Nobody can tell me anything about Coco Michelle. Nobody. It's gonna bounce right back off of me, because I am so certain in myself that there's nothing that anybody can say, whether they love me or hate me. You can't give your validation to other people. It's a recipe for disaster, I promise you. So I'm so sorry if you're dealing with toxic family. I know the impact that family has, whether they're supportive or toxic. I know the impact and the pull they have on our perceptions of ourselves. So baby girl, just ground yourself. You got this. So this video is getting kind of long, so I'm gonna end it with this last question from Lolo Ash Designs. And it says, advice for people who are scared to do the same. And I think that this is a really good question, because fear is such a huge factor into everything that we do. I'm not asking you to not be afraid. I'm not asking you to not be nervous or scared. Those feelings are inevitable. But I need you to take that fear and put it in the passenger seat, because you are in charge. The wheel is in your hands. So the fear can come along for the ride, but she can't make any decisions. You can acknowledge that you are afraid. You can acknowledge that you have fear, but you have to push through. The only thing scarier than this transition I've ever experienced in my life is becoming a mother. Okay, that was terrifying. But quitting a 6-figure job to work out of your guest bedroom, yeah, that's scary. Fear was sitting next to me the whole time, but I said, hey, better sit down and shut up. You don't make any choices around here, because we have the ultimate power over our fears, okay? The fear can't tell us what to do unless we allow it. So it's okay to be scared while you're doing it. And I'm not saying here to start acting silly. I'm not sitting here saying to quit your job when you don't have the money. I'm not sitting here saying to quit your job when you don't have the audience. I'm saying that if fear is stopping you from showing up, from doing what you know you have to do to be able to make the choices you have to make, then you need to tell fear to get out of the driver's seat. Because we're all scared. We're all walking around here scared. That's not a unique feeling. We're all afraid. None of us really know what the hell we're doing, if we're being honest. But you have to show up and do the thing anyway. And guess what? The more you do things, the more you show up, the less scary it becomes. I can come on the internet and do just about anything at this point, because I've done it so much. The fear of failure, the fear of going live and nobody showing up, or getting trolled, or posting something and then not getting likes, or getting no views, or people saying rude comments to me in my DMs. I've been through it all, and it's not scary anymore, because I showed up even when I was terrified, and I made it out. So now it has proven to me, my brain and my subconscious, that okay, this is uncomfortable, slightly annoying at most, but it's not anything to fear. So continuing to show up, continuing to do what you have to do, and not letting fear determine your decisions is the only way that you're going to be able to get to the next step. That's the biggest advice I have for anyone who's dealing with fear as the main motivator for them to not walk in their truth, is you got to tell fear to sit down. find you something safe to do. So thank you to everyone who submitted questions. I think I answered most of them in one way, shape, or form throughout these questions that I selected. If there's anything that you want me to cover specifically that I didn't, make sure you leave that in the comments down below. And if you got to this point in the video, leave an orange heart in the comments so I know that you're here with me, sis, and that you kicked it with me. I so appreciate it. If you enjoyed this content, give it a thumbs up, consider subscribing, and I will see you in the next one. Bye-bye.